just to kind of get started today, if we don't have any questions from open forum, we're going to go ahead and go right into our QB Courier topic today, which is going to be troubleshooting and adding your email activities. We have gone over QB Courier in the past, so there may be some overlap, but those of you who did not watch that video, some of this will be new. And for those of you who are frequent attendees, you will see our lease management app that we've been using. But to begin, I want to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions regarding our add-ons. I don't want to take away from that, as that's extremely important to us. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to speak up. If not, you can put your question in the chat for those of you who are a little bit more introverted. Don, I wouldn't put you as introverted, but I'll take the question. Typing away. There we go.
Hey Matt, no, I'll go live. I've got a courier problem with one client. I actually put a ticket in for you guys. We're having repeated issues on authentication from Courier to Gmail.
Okay.
Has something changed in the, well, things are always changing in the Google world, but has something significant happened in the Google world that is making the connection to, the big uglies in the Valley harder and harder?
Yes, there has been significant changes with Gmail mail servers in the past year. At least since I've started here, there's been significant changes. Specifically with authenticating with third parties, such as ourselves, you do need an app password. Do you have an app password?
The client has 2FA disabled for their entire suite.
Unfortunately,
I believe prohibits then the generation of an app password. If they enable 2FA, then everything else in the enterprise goes to shit.
That's tough. Yeah, because if you actually look, I don't have it up with me right now, but Gmail has required the use of app passwords when connecting to a third-party software such as ourselves. So we do need to use that app password. Now, I know 2FA needs to be turned on, and that does cause some issues. I'm not sure if Manal's here. I don't know if there's a specific setting within the Gmail mail server where you can still create an app password but disable two-factor. We might have to get back to
I think Matthew, in order to generate the app password, you have to turn on two-step authentication. But a lot of our clients, they only turn on two-step authentication for one of their email address, not across the entire domain. And that seems to be working for many of our clients. But if you don't have an app password, and if you just have email address and password, you must have that less secure apps, allow less secure app setting turned on. So that's how we are able to connect to your mail server. Otherwise, we will be getting authentication errors. So if you are not getting authentication errors and you are getting intermittent failures, it is due to the limits that Gmail has applied. So they constantly are checking in. They have limit per day. We don't know about those limits based upon your account. Limits per day, limits per user account, and total number of email that you can send out for a short period of time. So there are a couple of limits that they apply, and based upon that, we do get failures time to time. And we ask our clients to try after some time, and then sometimes they have to try a few times and then everything works. Unfortunately, we don't
It's
have
the authentication problem, not total limits. They're only sending a couple of dozen commission statements a
So
month.
if it is an authentication problem, then as Matthew said, that you need an app password. I think Matthew, didn't we send out a communication to all of our customers about how to generate an app password and all?
We did. This is definitely the biggest part of it. If you follow this help site page, you'll have no issue making it. And then in terms of adding it on our end, you would just navigate to our mail server and basically put in that app password here. So I definitely recommend doing that. I don't think, unfortunately, there's a way to get around the two-factor authentication.
Yes.
And that's, I know you said that's a kind of a deal breaker for you, Don.
I'll work with the client on it. I'm negotiating with them a whole move to Office 365 and to never touch Google again. But that has all its own problems in its own right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Office
All right,
365 has also an app password, and they are soon going to require too, because it's all about security, you know. So, see,
That's just the way of the world.
yeah.
Nothing secure or private about 2FA. It causes all sorts of issues. All right. Get back to your presentation, Matt. I apologize for slowing you down.
Don't apologize at all. That's actually a very, very good question, completely relevant to what we're talking about today. And that is part of the troubleshooting and debugging that we're going to be talking about, is potentially going over what happens if your mail server kind of magically stops working. Those types of things do happen. We do get support tickets like that frequently, asking, you know, why is my mail server no longer connected? Sometimes it's because you do put two-factor authentication on, in which case we would need that app password. So if you don't kind of keep that updated, it's going to have issues. We're going to jump right back into Quickbase. For those of you who are viewing my screen, you should be seeing the invoices table. Now, if you have been keeping up with the office hours sessions, you're probably pretty familiar with this lease management application. We might need a new one soon. We've kind of overloaded this with just about everything. So we're going to maybe give this 1 or 2 more office hours sessions, and then we'll go with a clean slate. But today we're going through the invoices table, and we're going to kind of go through just some tips and tricks of how to debug Courier, as well as give yourself some more tools, such as using these email activities table, which we may have gone over in the past, but we're just going to go through adding that, as many people don't realize that feature is there. So just to start, if you wanted to have, let's say, a group of invoices send out, let's say every month you have your monthly invoices, and you want to send them all out to your client without having to go through each one individually to trigger it. Now, if you remember from our past videos, or if you're familiar with Courier, we have a few different sending options. So on that processing mode, we have on-demand, scheduled, and trigger. Now, trigger is pretty much the most popular, and that's going to say a change in Quickbase is going to cause an email to go out. So we've done that a couple times, just to, you know, throughout these processes that we've set up, whether it's exact forms plus triggering an email to go out, that includes that document. We've gone through that many times, and Justin, I'm sure you can find that video on there somewhere, maybe sometime in March. Or you may even have done a scheduled email to go out, where you're saying maybe weekly at, let's say, 9 a.m. you want to send out an email on Wednesdays that gives, someone an update on a certain report or on a certain document. We've gone through that as well. And we do want to just touch on demand. Now, on demand is exactly what it sounds like. You're sending out a group of emails, a report of emails, whenever you decide is the right time. So it's going to be based upon a button click. So for this example, we're sending all monthly invoices. We have the status enabled. Now, remember, I usually recommend putting it to test mode at first, everyone. You don't want to send anything out live. It's always best to be safe. So I'm just going to keep this one enabled, but I do recommend test mode. Description and tags, as always, that's for your own sake. If you guys want to kind of keep track of what exactly these emails are, it's good to stay organized. And then you have your Quickbase connection. So for those of you who weren't in our previous office hours or are new to Courier, to make a Quickbase connection, you definitely just want to go to your data connections and create a new connection. Super simple. You're just going to pick Quickbase. It's going to give you your account URL, and you're going to check this checkbox. Do you have a user token? And you're just going to pop that right in there, that Quickbase user token. As I believe all of you know how to do at this point, Quickbase user tokens are used for pipelines, for our tools, for any tool that's really connecting to any outside source. You're going to use that user token. And then you have just a connection name. So whatever you feel like naming it. So I'm just going to jump back to Courier. And I'm going to go into my configurations. Now, just for navigation purposes, you can click on configurations here or Courier configurations here. It brings you to the same spot. And I'm going to hit this far arrow. Not many clients have as many pages of Courier as we do. We use it ourselves. We use our tools every day. So I'm going to go all the way to our own configuration. So I'm back here. Here's that connection that I made. So that's based off of my user token, and my user token has access to this Quickbase application, lease management, as well as this table invoices. So as I was saying before, we're going to be sending this out from the invoices table. Now I wanted to send out from a specific report, and that's what on-demand allows us to do. It allows us to send out from a specific report. So we only have a couple reports here. I pick quick report for office hours. So you're going to go ahead and hit next after that. On this screen here, we get frequent questions on this. When you click on your mail server, the from email, it says, are you sure you want to change your sending option? And the reason why we do this is because this is a pretty important selection. And just like Don was asking, and we were talking about your mail server before, if you're using your own mail server, which many of our clients do, you probably don't want to change that all too often. But this mail server, this time we're using our Quickbase email.com. And I actually did make a quick poll. So if you guys wouldn't mind answering a quick poll, which mail server do you guys use? So are you like Don? Do you use Gmail? Do you use Office 365? Are you using one of our mail servers, which is quickbaseemail.com? Or are you potentially using something else? So if you see that poll up on your screen, please feel free to answer that. I'll leave that open for quite a while we go through this. We also have our email field. So the email field, I explained kind of in many different videos, many times. It's going to be who you're actually sending to, your to email. So in this case, I have email to, and I'm going to show you guys why in a minute, why we did email to, because this is a common question that comes up. As well as our update field, which I didn't fill in on purpose because we're going to go through adding a date time field, kind of similar to Exact Forms Plus for those of you who have used it. And then we have our simple BCC, reply to, and copy addresses. That should be very familiar for anyone who's ever used any type of mail server in the past. It's just going to be your regular email to CC and BCC. So I'm going to go through and I'm just going to continue to email message. Now, email message is a little bit, different, but yet similar to any type of, email body you've ever made. The difference here is you're always going to be able to use fields from Quickbase, as any of you who have used our tools before, or even the native Quickbase email notifications, you can identify dynamically the fields from Quickbase that you want to use. So right now it's showing me all the fields that are found on the report that I'm looking at. So if you remember, I chose quick report for office hours. And you can see in order from left to right that I have those fields identified here for me to use throughout the email. So if you wanted to, you can drag and drop in. I mention this pretty often, but a trick of the trade, wherever you may want to have a field come in, make sure you put your cursor. That cursor really makes a big difference. So if I drop anywhere on the page, it's going to go right to my cursor. So I always recommend doing that. If you want to remove it out, you can just take it out. This is essentially your C list. Now, as always, you have your subject line. Your subject line can also include anything that comes in that C list. So maybe we want to just put, record ID in there, for example, just for, safekeepings. Now, there is one thing wrong here, and this is part of the troubleshooting and debugging that I'm going to go through. If you noticed, and unless you're super eagle-eyed, you probably would not. I have a field on here that's not included in my table fields, and that's because it's not included in this report. In many times, people may know they have a field, so they may know they have a field called account holder name, and don't realize that it's necessarily not in this table fields. So they may see this, convention of putting the square bracket and writing in account holder name. So they feel they can just write that in, which is fine. And I do understand where that would come from. However, that's going to actually throw us an error. And I'm going to show you what it's going to say in a second and how to find that error message and how to resolve it in just a moment. So I'm just going to continue to go through just so you guys have that clean kind of go through of each of these tabs at the top. The next one's the big kicker, and that's the email attachments. As many of you do know, you can browse from static attachments. So everyone's going to get the same copy of the same attachment, or you can do the dynamic attachment, which is saying from a file attachment field on Quickbase or Amazon S3, but we'll keep it to Quickbase for now. The table you're getting it from, which we're doing invoices still, and then the document that you want to grab. So we have EFP document. Lastly, we have test configuration, which we're going to use to send out a test of this and show you a quick error, as well as finish. So I'm going to show you finish right after we go through the error message, just so that we have this separated. So I'm going to go ahead and hit test. This is pre-filled for 5. If you notice, I can't change this. The reason why I can't change this is it's actually based off of that report. If you look at the top here, QID equals 5. This is report ID 5. We already have identified that, so I can't change this. And I can just put my own email here. And if I want to, I could separate and send it to a couple other people as well. I believe you separate it with a comma, if not a semicolon. I believe it's comma. Go ahead and hit test. Now it says success, and this is more of like a little pat on back message. That doesn't necessarily mean that it went out successful, but it does mean that you did send out a test. So kind of just giving you the, an idea that an action did happen. But from here, a lot of people don't know where to go to see if there was an actual activity. So I've said this many times in the past, but I'm going to say it again. This kind of hamburger icon, as some of my colleagues call it, these 4 lines, this is our activity messages. So if you click on here, you'll actually see the activities from today. And in this use case, you can see the processing details. And what many people don't know is you can actually still read this whole message. And I know it's kind of smudged over there in the corner, but if you hover over it and kind of let your mouse go, you'll see the following fields are missing in the report used to select the data for the field message. You have report ID 5 is missing fields account holder name. So as I mentioned just before, that account holder name field was not in our C list or our report to use. So I'm going to go ahead and hit back and just show you guys again that account holder name field here is not found in our table fields. And this specifically happens when you're in on demand. And I'm going to show you how to resolve this, and I'm going to show you how to resolve it in Trigger as well. So to make it as simple as possible, you can just navigate right back to your report. I already have it open. You're going to customize this report. Right now, it looks like we're using the default fields. So we're going to change the default fields. And it's right there at the top for me. I'm going to throw account holder name in. And you can put it anywhere on the report you want. I'll just keep it there at the bottom. And that's it. Now, if I go back to Courier, since that was the only field that was missing, I still have my account holder name field here. And maybe I'll just refresh things and click back. And let's see. Now you see account holder name here is at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just keep things clean. I'll take that out. And I'm going to throw it right back in. So account holder name is now identified there. I'm going to hit update next, which refreshes everything. And let's go ahead and hit test configuration. Now you have no idea how often we get support tickets from clients who say, hey, my Courier configuration doesn't work. I'm not sure why. And we'll ask them, did you check the activities? And they won't really have an idea where the activities are. So they don't really know. But with that said, we did get our successful message here. So it's kind of cool how we do it. I really like our test configuration look. It gives you a kind of a breakdown of exactly what's going to get sent out. And that's why I like pressing test configuration. So it says, we're running in test mode, no emails were sent to clients. And I think that's important for everyone to see. And so based off the settings in the configuration, 9 email messages were going to go out when this is switched to enabled. And here's a sample of the message that would have been sent. So it gives you all the fields from Quickbase that we're bringing in and just identifies it very quickly. That's the best way to kind of test your emails. Even if you're pretty confident, it's always best to do this at least once so you see what's going out. You might find small details that are incorrect. We also include that file attachment for you so you can kind of get a full idea of what's going on. It's always best to do this. So I highly recommend going through and testing your configuration. Makes a lot of sense.
One more point on the test, Matt. In that email notification, obviously 9 records are supposed to go out. We don't show you a test email with all 9 of the emails. We actually take the first one in the report, we pop it in there so you can see that, okay, all of the fields were replaced properly, the file attachment was there. And the other thing we do is not only do we not send out the email to that first person or anybody, we don't update your Quickbase application. So if you were using Courier sent date, which Matt's going to show you, it won't update the record. So it basically, everything looks the same as it did before you actually executed it. But this is just like a trial run for this email configuration.
Right, exactly. And this is one of the coolest things I think about Courier. It's really nice for your own mental sanity to know what's going to go out before you send it, especially when this number says maybe, 100 or 500, depending on how big of an email you're sending. I know I've made a mistake and sent it to all of our clients. So
And the test emails don't count towards your allotment of Courier transactions for the month or for the year.
Yep, that's a good point as well. So for those of you who are looking at your transaction counts, that does not count. Definitely a good point. Something I want to go over right now that I actually went through in a customer call this morning, so I thought I would add this, was I had a client who had it was actually a scheduled report, and they changed it to trigger, and they were getting this very, very similar error to what we were getting. So I'm going to show you what changes when we go into trigger. So first off, if you look at the bottom here, there's no field called CList here. Let me go ahead and change this to trigger. You see that our report goes away because we're no longer using a report. So we're just using the invoices table. And make sure you hit update next, or else your changes won't change. We'll come back to the email to field and update because I do want to show you guys why we use those. But if you notice here, you now have the message/subject field list, which is really your C list. Enter your C list here. If I were to go and test this configuration now, it allows me to put a record ID in. So let's just imagine we use this one. This is record ID 1. Perfect. We'll just put 1 in there for the record ID and test. Now I'm inevitably going to get an error message here, essentially because our C list is blank. So as I was just explaining to you before, the table fields used to be our C list. Now when you're in trigger, you show every field on that table. And that's good and bad, because now you have the ability to use every field without having to have it in a C list. But if you check your activities, it's actually going to say I'm missing account holder name, invoice, invoice date, and monthly payment plan. Those are all the fields that I'm showing on there. So although one record was ready to be processed, it can't send it because there's nothing in that C list. So the client had scheduled a meeting with me because they weren't sure what happened. Everything was working just fine, but they changed it to trigger. So the easiest way to change this is how I find it is to take it out as we were showing you before. So now you take that account holder name, remember to put the cursor where you want it, throw it in, you see 6 jumps there. Now maybe we have invoice. Well, where's invoice here? We take invoice, throw it in. Maybe take invoice date, throw it in. Oh, did that get thrown in? I might have been too slick with that. Invoice date, let's try that again. Invoice date, and then monthly payment plan. So again, flash and cursor, anywhere on the page, throw it in. Maybe put a period at the end. So now you see 6, 12, 11, and 24 gets added. The other one we have here is record ID. You don't want to forget about that. And you could put that in there. And trust me, if anyone knows about forgetting record ID, it's me. Don't forget it. And we'll update next. You have your EFP document, and you're going to put 1 in there. Now after this, you should have no error. I know that's kind of a pain in the butt, but many times people don't change from on-demand to trigger or trigger to on-demand. Trigger to on-demand is a little bit easier, but again, you might have heard that ding on my end. Here's that email that just went out. 1 email was sent as it identifies here instead of 9. So you can see this is a different version. So it's basically grabbing that same data just because I did grab that first record. But if you go check the activities now, that processing detail is blank. If it's blank, that means it was sent successfully. So emails to be sent, and nothing was sent though because it was a test. So that's how you change from on-demand to trigger. That was a question this morning, so I just wanted to highlight that so that you guys all know how to make those changes. Now, I'm going to jump back. I'm going to go in and I'm going to go now and talk to you guys about the email options. So I'm going to go through, two things that I like to make sure we talk about. One, I have this email to and this update field. So for starters, that email to, I'm going to tell you guys why I did that. I frequently get clients who may have blank email fields. So this field here is actually a lookup, excuse me, from other records. And if you're sending out on demand, it's actually going to fail if there's records that don't have an email address. It'll say found records with blank email addresses. And clients might say, well, I have another field if that's the case that I can use. Can I vary those fields? Yes, you can, but you're going to want to use just a very simple formula text field. So just what we have behind here is if that lease email address is equal to blank, use the secondary email address. If not, use that lease email address. I wanted to show that because although that's a super simple rudimentary formula, a lot of clients do not understand that if there's nothing in the email field, there's going to be errors. So this is a way just to guarantee that every single record is going to have an email in that field. As you can see here, half of these do, half of these don't. So now all of them do. So that's why we're using that email to field. And we do make sure that we use that field as our email to instead of maybe what you would consider your primary email field. That way you cover all cases, so you never have an issue. So that's my recommendation there. You'd be surprised how often that comes up. And then the other one is your date field. So you want to make sure, just like with Exact Forms Plus, and I'll just jump into one of these records, we have an Exact Forms Plus date field, EFP date. Now, we don't automatically make really any fields for you for Courier. So it's always good to go on in and just add a Courier sent date field. And you can just name it that, Courier sent date. And if you just do a regular date time field, that's all you need. And that's just going to make sure that you kind of get some clarity of when things were sent. You don't want people sending out emails twice. You don't want, frivolous emails made. And you may want to kick off other processes based off of this email field. So by putting this Courier sent date field as the update field, you're going to be able to keep track of everything a lot better. So that's always highly recommended. I often see clients' configurations with that update field blank. So just fill that out for your own sake. It's going to make a lot of sense. You're going to know if emails were sent very easily. So that's the best way to do that. Super simple explanation. Now, the other thing that we had in our, PowerPoint saying that we would go over today was this finish tab. And not many people even get to this finish tab, but we always get a lot of questions when we get there. So speaking of questions, I'm going to give myself a second to breathe. Does anyone have any questions based off of everything we went through so far? I know I'm going fast. It's kind of my trademark. All right. Seems like everyone's following along. So on this finish page, there's a kind of a few things you could do here that people don't know about. And I'm going to start from left to right. First things first is when you're on trigger, and if you remember, I made this trigger, you actually need to make an email notification to go out to send out emails live. And I can show you our leases where we did one of our office hours about Courier. Oh, was it not leases? Maybe it was tenants and prospects. Yeah. So in this tenants and prospects table, I can see that I have send welcome letter email. From within here, this email notification from Quickbase is actually how we identify when we want to send out an email. So it's really our trigger email from Quickbase. A lot of people don't know where these settings come from. It's pretty easy to find them if you go to our help site. And I can just go to juicetech.com and help. And then you can just navigate down to email and texting and go to Courier. And then you can find basically everything I'm talking about today, but you could also find making the new Where is it? We're gonna have Justin find that for you guys because I don't feel like looking for it right now. It's definitely in there. But if you ever have any issues finding how to make that email notification, you could always hit this yellow button. And this yellow button actually gives you everything you need, exactly how you need it to make this email notification. So right here, it tells you the permission type, the notification name, notification to whom, and this is going to be to qbcourier@courier.quickbasetools.com. Now that right there is really the kicker, because you need to be identifying that you're sending it to our mail server. Now you might see that I have my own email address in there. That's because I do like to see a copy of this so that I know for sure that that was sent out, and that if it doesn't go, I know I have to check my activities, because then there was an issue there. But if it doesn't go, then you know it was something with your own notification when, your conditions to when you want to have it sent out. So it's always good as a secondary check to put your own in there. And then it goes all the way down to the subject as well as the custom message ID. Now this is going to be different for every single one of our clients. So we can't give you a hard and fast one, but we can make it for you. So if you come to this custom message, you could actually copy this right in. And you can find right at the bottom here that I can actually put that right in there. So this one's actually a little interesting because we have the tenant number in this table. So it gives you something a little bit different than record ID. That's because this app is from the exchange and they changed the record ID key to be tenant number. But you could always just take this exactly as it is, Control C and Control V right into your custom message. So we try to make it as simple as possible for you guys to have this work. And not many people know that that's what this yellow button does. In fact, many people don't make it to this finish tab. Technically, you don't need to get there unless you're setting it up for the first time, but that's definitely where you're going to want to go if you're setting up a triggered email. That's where you want it to go. Now, pretty self-explanatory, Courier error emails.
Wait, Matt, 1 second before you do that. When you click on that yellow button, if you don't want to just sit there and look at that, close that, put your email address in underneath that, and then you can send an email to yourself, which basically shows you everything that's in that view email notification settings. And then you can come back and go into your app and do it at a later date.
Really? Now, I was just going to breeze over that because I didn't know what that did at the bottom there. Enter your email address to have us send the email notification settings. That's pretty self-explanatory. So we'll wait for that to come in, and here we go. Choose technologies. Very nice. I don't think I've seen this since like my first couple months here. Would you look at that? So there you go. We will send you this email notification that's going to include everything you need, just as Keith said, with the type, as well as the multi-record version with the repeat on and repeat off, which I did not mention. But that's if you were going to be sending kind of, when do you use the multi-record version, Keith?
When you're in grid edit and you want to like trigger a bunch of, let's say you're in a report, there's 100 records in there, but you only want to send emails through this Courier configuration to dynamic, just choose maybe 5, 6, 10, whatever. So when you're in grid edit and you have a little checkbox, you can check off the records you want to send to. And when you hit save, the reason why it's multi-record is because you're updating obviously multiple records in one transaction or in one session. So Courier can handle that. So it doesn't have to be a report. It doesn't have to be an on-demand. It can be a triggered configuration, but you can send out to multiple records just by using the multiple record settings in the email notification inside of Quickbase.
Right. Right. Well, this is great. So yeah, just as Keith said, it gives you all the details needed for a later date. So you have it in your email address. This is definitely very, very helpful. And as you can see, extremely similar to what we have here. So if you don't feel like going back and forth on your screen, kind of like this, that's probably your better way of doing it. So that's a great tip to know. And this is not required, by the way. Don't worry about that. As I was going to now, the email activity, and this is part of what we wanted to mention today, because this is pretty important that not everyone uses, and we feel everyone should. So the Courier error emails, if there ever is an error, sort of like what we're seeing here, and you want someone on your team to get it, the best thing you could do is add them to this error email. Now you can add multiple people if you want. I believe this is going to be separated by a comma as well. And maybe you want to have, Keith J drawn in there. So that's the best way that you could just add someone to get these error emails. And that's just, as a check, just in case. It's always good to know if something doesn't go out successfully. And then you have your activity log. So add local activity log. So when you check this checkbox, you see a bunch of fields come in here. Now, I can kind of go through each one of these and actually map them, as I have used the email activities before in another session. So I can actually go through and map these one at a time. Now, I always like, and it's always best if it's your first time, to hit add new activity table. Now, if I do that right now, error, failed to create activity table, that's because I already have it. So if you haven't already made one, definitely hit this checkbox here, add new activity table. It's going to make your life easier. If not, you're going to want to go through and kind of just add these. Now, it's a little bit tedious, but it's pretty easy to do. It's pretty self-explanatory. They're all named the same. So, your activity table is going to be your email activities. Your activity to field is going to be who you're sending to. And again, it's email to. Activity from, again, super, super simple. They're all named one to one. So I'm not necessarily going to go through each one of these, but I will show you the email activities message again here. So if I go back, you can see that we have all these email messages here. And it kind of just gives you a list of every email that was sent and a little bit of metadata about each one. So email to, from, CC, BCC, subject, message body, sent date, table name, table record ID, configuration name, if there was errors, the error details, and a couple other messages about the mail server, as well as any attachments that it might come, as well as the related field it's coming from. One thing that we get up pretty frequently on this in the email messages for those who do use it, if you include rich text or HTML in your message body, a lot of people report that they see the actual rich text, like they might see the break tags or the italicized tags, the bold tags, everything like that. So when we make this field, we have to change it to rich text. I believe I already did that on the last call, but it comes in as text multi-line, I believe, by default. So if you're including rich text, please just change this email message body to be rich text. Super simple to do, but it'll make all the world of difference as you go through. And again, when you're adding all of those fields, especially if you have an email message body or email activities already, you do have to go through one at a time. If not, it'll make everything for you and map it one to one. So it's super simple. Does anyone have questions on that? Keith, you look like you have something to say.
Just a comment. The adding the local table is such a great benefit. Like, so if you don't have to choose to add a local activity log, you add a local activity log and then add a new table. You want to add a new table of this because we'll create the table inside of your application and we do all that mapping for you. So you don't have to worry about that. But the huge benefit there is now you can see all of the emails that Courier sent out for your different records. And just to give you an idea, obviously you guys have gotten quotes from us before in the past. And we have a little drip campaign going in our quote application that we send you a follow-up email right after that. So maybe 7 days later, we'll send you a follow-up, say, hey, you know what, we sent you a quote, want to make sure if we can answer any questions, blah, blah, blah. But now I can go into my quote and I have a sub-report in my quote table that shows me every time I sent out an email through Courier for that quote. So I can see I sent out 7 emails already, or maybe I only sent out 1. So I think this is a great way not only to log errors, but also successful emails. So that's what you'll get here. When you have a local activity table in your app, you get both the errors as well as the successful sends. And that's just a great tool to help to add to your application for tracking what's going out and maybe what's going out in error.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest thing is there's a lot of people that don't use this. And that's kind of just, you're missing out on a little bit of value. So we really recommend using it as well. Just to save yourselves from having to really kind of figure out for yourselves if anything went out or not. So why not have us go through and Maybe I'll change this back to on demand as it should have been. We still have our quick report for office hours. Let's just double check that all these fields are in my C list now. As we remember from before, our account holder name, we want to make sure that's there. That should all be good to go, as well as our message body. So if you go and you go back, many people don't necessarily know that on demand gives you a button here, execute now. And thankfully, it gives you a little bit of a secondary warning. Are you sure you want to process all these? So yes, we do. And I'm potentially going to send myself 9 emails right now. Now, again, that those same activities that we were talking about before, you don't have to necessarily be in the actual configuration to see those. You can find them on the left side here as well in this activities. So we have activities, view, edit, and copy. Now, as you might have heard the ding and a couple of dings coming through, we had 9 emails to be sent, and I just sent myself an email 9 times. So you can kind of just see I have this invoice, 1009. So let's go ahead and see if our changes to the email activities worked. Let's see if I have this sorting by anything. Sort. Let's sort by date. Where's date? Email sent date. And did I do something wrong there, Keith? That was what I wanted to show. Just in case you guys were worried about it, I did get all 9 of my emails here. So is it possible that you do have to have all of those fields filled out? I'm not sure if Manal's still here, but I just want to double check on that.
Yeah, you have to have them all mapped.
Well, that's on
That's
me.
why it's always easier to
Add
create
new
the table
activity.
yourself instead of trying to map it. But the reason for the mapping is, let's say you don't want to create a new table, you have an existing table that you might be tracking other things for, and you just want to reuse that table.
Right.
So, you have to map them all, but
That's on me, guys. I was being lazy. Well, I might continue to be lazy. Based off of that, does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns, any questions on what Keith was saying about that drip campaign? Because that's actually a pretty cool idea that we utilize, and I'm not sure if everyone knows the possibilities with doing stuff like that, kind of sending those emails out based off of certain settings in your Quickbase tables. Doesn't seem like it. That's okay.
good thing too is once you set this up for this configuration, you never have to do this again.
Right.
Unless you change your fields in your activities table.
Matthew, looks
Yes.
like the emails, we did insert the activity records. I think they were not related to it. If you go look at the list changes, look at it, and I think we did insert. It's probably you never had the related data. You don't have to fill out all the fields, but I think you were missing the related field. You never mapped that field. So these activities are not related to your master table. All
Thank
right.
goodness Manal's here. So yep, as you can see, they are here. So I was wrong, and we don't need to have everything filled out, but I did not have those related fields in there. So you do get to see the data that I had filled out, email sent date not being one of them, email BC not being one of them, but you get to see the email to, the email from, which you can see is matthewt@quickbaseemail.com, and the email CC. Now we do have about, looks like 13 minutes or so. I just want to quickly mention this matthewt@quickbaseemail.com. Now, Don, I see you're still here. This is a potential other option for your client. As much as they want to send out from their own mail server, they can use our mail server. And it's a little bit better than Courier at quickbasetools.com. You can put in your own, I guess, front end of this email, and then we'll have our domain. So it's a secondary option for them where they don't have to change having everything come from Gmail. They might want to still use Outlook. We call this the semi-branded option. There's no additional cost for this. And we could put whatever you want in front of @quickbaseemail.com. And you could have more than one. So just that's another option for you guys out there who may not want to connect to your mail server or may have issues connecting based off of the settings or security requirements at your organization. We do understand that, so we wanted to make sure that there is another option. Mine is matthewt@quickbaseemail.com. It could be anything. It might want to be, Acme invoices at quickbaseemail.com. If that's the case, just please let us know. We'd be happy to make that for you, and it would become available pretty easily in your email options. As you can see, mail server at quickbaseemail.com. Just another option for you.